Hi, everybody. Pleasure to have another exciting guest today. And it is Tim Harrison. Tim is a young man who has a very unusual, from my perspective, resume. After graduating from Rice University with degree in psychology, right? Tim, psychology. Then Tim turned more into philanthropy and also AI and coaching. So this is not what you see on a resume of many people, especially not somebody as young in age as Tim is. So Tim, thank you so much for accepting our invitation for today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Rice University has a very soft spot in our hearts because we worked with General Colditz a lot on creating a coaching program there, and also to build that system of supporting students through coaching. Were you at Rice at that time, or yeah?
Yeah. I was there a few years after they had started.
Uh huh.
So for those of you guys who don't know me, you can't tell from the screen, but I'm actually 6'8", and so
Yes.
basketball was a big part of my journey. And so in high school, I was a standout player. I had a lot of scholarship offers, and I ended up going to Rice University. And about 2 years in, I realized like basketball wasn't going to be my path, and so I needed to pursue different things beyond just
Mm.
sports. And so that's when I got exposure to coaching, psychology, and I just was opened up to a whole new world. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You play for Division 1, of course, right? So Division 1,
Mhm.
and yeah, I attest. He's very tall. You can see Tim from a distance. That's actually quite fun. So, being an athlete, naturally, you also had an exposure to coaching, perhaps from a little bit different perspective. How did you stumble upon professional coaching as we define it? And so that you know, Tim is also an ACC accredited, so associate credential coach
Yeah.
with ICF.
Yeah. How do I stumble upon coaching?
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, so I just alluded to my journey a little bit, but in high school, I was a standout basketball player. I was at the Under Armour All-American basketball camp, the Adidas All-American basketball camp. I won the San Diego All-Star dunk contest. And so coming into college, I was like, okay, cool. I'm on this upward trajectory and I'm going to take basketball as far as I can go. I got a full ride scholarship, moved from California over here to Texas. And it turned out like I struggled a bit in my college athletic career. I faced some adversity. I wasn't breaking through like how I thought I would. And for me, that was tough. And I was also dealing with some things just interpersonally. Someone I was dating at the time ended up going behind my back with one of my teammates.
Aw.
And I was like, man, my life is not going how I thought it was going to go right now. You know, I'm about a sophomore, about a junior. And I'm like, my personal life is kind of going through some adversity. And then I'm not breaking through in this thing that has been a big part of my identity my whole life. You know, even today, every time I go in public, I have several people approach me and saying, oh, do you play basketball? Who do you play for? And so that's been not just an identity that I took on, but it's an identity that's also projected onto me. And so I was in an identity crisis. And I just remember, well, you know, like this can't be my
Mm.
story. I feel like I'm failing right now. I feel like I'm losing, and I feel like my life is not in my control. And I was like, there was one game, you know, my parents, they'd flown all the way from San Diego to come watch me play, and I didn't get in the game. And I just remember being in the
Oh.
shower afterwards, I had my hands on the rails, and I was just like, I didn't want to go outside because I just felt so embarrassed. I just felt like I was losing. And so I was like, I remember in that moment, I was just, you know, this can't be my story. You know, in every movie, the character goes through a dip before the come up. And I'm like, I don't know what the come up is going to look like, but I'm in the dip right now and I'm committed to making this. This is not going to be my story. But I didn't know what that meant. But I did know I had to take extreme ownership. And so I just got hungry. I started to learn. I was like, my map of the world is incorrect, whether it's with relationships or how I'm interacting with my teammates or these different things. So I need to learn. And so I get hungry and I started reading books about my mindset, about, you know, positive thinking. I was speaking negatively towards myself, you know,
Yeah, sure.
and I was seeing all the negatives around me. And then through Rice, they had the program called the Door Institute, where I got access to executive level coaching as an undergrad. And for me, that was a game changer. At the
Mm.
same time, I'm studying and doing research in psychology. And so I'm studying psychology and cognitive science, neuroscience, and all this stuff. And then I'm reading about mindset. And then I'm experiencing coaching. I was like, wait, there's a through line. This isn't just self-help motivation. This This has rigor behind it. And I'm working with a coach to help me apply it, not just have ideas, but what are you going to do next week? And we're going to talk again. And so shout out to Ruth Reitmeyer, who's my first coach.
Oh,
But
sure.
that just really opened my experience a whole bunch. And I noticed that I felt like I had more control over my future, over my life.
Mhm.
And I just felt better about myself. But then what happened is people started to respond to me different. I was trying to build myself up from what I felt was rock bottom at the time, but I didn't know that I was also strengthening muscles that helped make me a leader.
Yeah.
People started to come to me to ask for things because they saw how I approached things, and I got nominated to be the president of an organization while I was at Rice, and I ended up landing my dream job in strategy consulting. And so I went from, kind of a struggling athlete, identity
Yeah.
crisis, to figuring out, hey, I can be a change maker on campus and I can create my own path. I don't just have to follow what was laid out. I can just have an idea. And if I can break that down and if I can apply that, I can do it and people will like it. And I'll run into a mistake, but that doesn't mean I have to stop. That means I can grow. And for me, that just opened up my world. And so just the power of coaching, the power of developing your mind was something that I just had a deep sense that this is very important to learn, but I had to stumble upon it because I went through a crisis. And
Yeah.
I always had that question in my mind, like, why isn't this part of education in general?
Yeah, yeah, and when I listen to you, and it's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing with us. But I also almost hear the voice of Tom Caldes, General Caldes, who led the Door Institute at the Rice University, who said colleges do not teach leadership. Colleges do not teach personal and professional development, and that's wrong. That's wrong because this is a skill which is it's dramatically important for young people as they are joining the workforce, as they are beginning their adult life. So that seems that message carried through very significantly and powerfully for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. I met Tom later on, and he coached me for a brief period. He mentored me a bit, but I think, there's something powerful about just telling people that, hey, you can do things and I'm going to help, but I'm not going to tell you what to do because I'm very self-determined. And so if someone were to come in and tell me and give me a ton of advice before I feel like they knew me, that would not have worked for me. I was very driven and focused. So it was the perfect match because I'm like, oh, they're really letting me think,
Mhm.
but I also appreciate the guardrails because I might not know to ask myself certain questions, or I
Mm.
might not have gone as specific or like been accountable to it without that. And so it's a
Mhm.
powerful tool.
Yeah, so you mentioned your dream job that you
Yeah.
changed for something very different.
Yeah. So I ended up, going from psychology, I ended up getting a job in strategy consulting, which in and of itself wasn't a straight path. I went through this huge process and I landed the job that I really wanted. And I was so proud. I was so grateful because I went through those negative experiences
Right.
and I turned it into something positive. And then, I graduated in 2020. And if you remember what was going on in the world at that time,
Yeah.
there was a global pandemic. And I just remember I had all this time in quarantine. And because of that,
Mm.
they moved my start date to after the summer. So I had all this time. I had these several months. And I'm just looking at the world and it's on fire. Things are upside down. There's this disease spreading everywhere and no one knows what it was. This is pre-vaccine. And then there's a lot of social justice crises that start to come to light around that time as well.
Right.
And I'm just thinking to myself, I turned my situation around. I achieved, I got the job, and I think I'll be successful. I think I'll figure out how to play this game. And I think I could do that at a high level. But I was like, that's about me.
Mm.
That's just about me. And I started to have this deep conviction that like, I want my life to be about contribution, the giving of oneself for the enhancement of others. That's my core value. And I started to think, well, what does that actually mean for me to do something beyond that? I had just had this instinct because the world's on fire and there's no shortage of problems to solve. But
Yeah.
I'm over here. I've been blessed to have a lot of opportunity and I made good on my opportunity through my work. But I was like, it's not just about myself.
Mm.
And I saw that a lot of the challenges that we see, have their roots in education. And I
Yeah.
remember I came across a quote by a man named Howard Thurman, who was a mentor of Dr. Martin Luther King. And he said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who've come alive. And I
Mhm.
was riding my bike at the time. I think I was listening to a podcast. I just stopped in my tracks. I was like, that's it right there. Like, what makes me come alive? I need something that grips me beyond just trying to get to the next step. And so I started to look, well, what makes me come alive is to help people achieve beyond what they believe is possible. I've always been a boundary pusher. I've always wanted to know, where is that boundary and what's possible beyond that. Sometimes that's gotten me into trouble, but other times I end up finding opportunities that no one else found because this is just the way that things are. And I think that that's a dangerous statement. And so we need to be able to push the boundaries, right? And it's about expanding people. And so I was like, well, how can I apply that given what I'm seeing on in the world? And I see a lot of the discrepancies that we see economically in communities have their roots in education.
Right.
And because if you're born in the wrong zip code, you might not have access to the same resources to fully develop your potential. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's a clear problem and a challenge. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then I started to think about my own experience with coaching, with personal development, and with psychology research, that there's actual research behind this. And I was like, there's a gap. I went to one of the top 15 universities in America, and the stuff that I learned on my own, I knew would have a bigger impact on my long-term trajectory. Not because this isn't valuable, it's because what I'm learning over here allows me to apply what I'm learning here in a way that's more leveraged and more impactful. And I thought to myself, well, if you gave students access to this kind of resource, I'd be willing to bet you could change the trajectory of their life.
Right.
And I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's true. And I was like, dang it. Now someone has to do that. Now that I've realized that I think this is a way to do it, this is something that, I want to do. But I had this job lined up, I was going to be making 6 figures, had the corporate name behind it. And it was the thing that to me was the accomplishment after I had gone through that negative experience. And I held that dear. But I was like, you know what? I asked for purpose, and I'm also a man of faith. And I also felt like there was a calling behind this as well. And so I ended up taking the leap of faith. I didn't know how I was going to make it work yet, but I ended up turning down that job offer and I went all in and I started this initiative. But more so, I have a mission to create a world where more people realize their potential, to inspire and equip people, right? Yeah. And so part of that manifested in this nonprofit, which we'll talk about, but helping make personal development part of education for students. But at the same time, I talked to Tom, I talked to the people at the Door Institute, and they actually waived the $10,000 fee for me to get coach training. And so that allowed me, as a broke college kid coming in, to actually get access to some of the top training in the world. And that's when I learned about ICF, the non-directive. And when I learned about it, I was like, oh my gosh, like they're speaking the language of how I think I'm wired. Like this right here is me. And I need to learn this. And I just drank it all up. And fortunately, I was in a cohort that wasn't with students. MD Anderson, which is the #1 cancer research center in the world, it's based here in Houston. They send their executive leaders to get coach training when they get promoted. So it was me, this 22-year-old kid on fire with all this passion in the middle of the pandemic, and then these like senior executives, and we're all coaching each other. We're all learning how to coach. And at the end of it, I was like, well, hey, you guys saw me coach. I'm good at what I do. Will some of you take me on as your coach? And several of them said yes. And so I got to start out my coaching career at 22, coaching senior level leaders at a major organization. And then I was starting my own coaching company at the same time. And through the last 4.5 years, I've been building kind of 2 different sides, but it's all around coaching. It's all around how can I be a catalyst for human development so that more people maximize their potential.
Yeah, this is amazing. And the story of coming to a crisis and coming out of it with the determination and conviction. I think used the term calling to build on what you learned painfully on your own experience. That's why when I saw the name of your not-for-profit, I was just laughing because tell our viewers, tell them what you name your not-for-profit.
Yeah. So the name of the nonprofit is EPOG Academy. EPOG, that's EPOG, and it stands for the Enjoyable Pain of Growth.
Enjoyable Pain of Growth. I mean, this is a twist already there. Yeah. Why did you think about such a name?
It came from my experience as a basketball player. We trained hard, Division I, and sometimes our conditioning coaches like to play mind games with us. And so after weights for an hour, and then a 3-hour basketball competitive practice, sometimes they would like to surprise us with conditioning. And there's this machine called the VersaClimber. And it's this little machine, and you climb on it, you have pedals on your feet.
Yeah.
But they hook you up to your heartbeat, and they know exactly how hard your heart can go because they assess you at the beginning. And so you have to stay in the red zone, which is as hard as your heart can beat for a certain amount of time. So there's no cheating this, and they put it on the screen. And so after this practice, I'm extremely tired, and we know that our conditioning coach is going to call 5 random people to do the reverse recliner, and you're exhausted. And my name gets called. And so we would all walk back to the locker room, put on our training shoes, take off our basketball shoes, and walk back. And typically everyone is just down, like, oh, man, you know, you go back and you walk in and you dread it. And I don't know what got into me that day. I was in that process of like switching my mindset. I was like, you know what? This is going to help me grow. I need to be in better shape. I'm just going to embrace it. I don't want to do it. I'm going to go all out. And I was like, what would happen if I just gave all out on every single rep? Didn't try to conserve my energy. And I go on it. I go all the way out on the first one. We have like 12 rounds of this. I'm exhausted, but I'm pushing. I kept doing it. And then my teammates noticed, hey, Tim, you need to conserve your energy. Like, what are you doing? You're going all out. And I did it. And I get to the 12th round and I just fall down. And I hit a PR, a personal record. And then, my teammates, they were cheering me on and everything. And I just remember I was laying down and I had the biggest smile on my face, but my legs were burning. And I was like, wow, I'm in the most pain, but I'm happy. I'm so joyful because I embraced it voluntarily and I pushed myself beyond my own limits. And I was like, I need a name for this emotion. It's painful, but I'm ecstatic because I knew I burst past something. I'm like, this is the enjoyable pain of growth because I know this is helping me grow and expand. And so I called it EPOG, like way before I knew about the nonprofit. So EPOG became like my own personal philosophy because it's not just physically, when you break down your muscles, you grow, but also in relationships. If I get out my comfort zone and I'm vulnerable, it leads to a deeper connection. I find that in every area of life, there's this idea that if you voluntarily embrace adversity and pain, you expand. And that process is enjoyable. And when you choose to embrace even the negatives in life, your life doesn't just become positives and negatives. It becomes positives and opportunities for growth. And then your life expands because everything you can be grateful for, you don't have to walk in fear because even if the worst thing happens to you, it can be an opportunity for you to grow. And I experienced that in every area of my life. And so when it came time to create this academy that was going to inspire and equip people with power to take control of their future, I was like, oh, EPOG Academy. That's what this is about. And so I don't think I've told that story
That's
publicly.
awesome. It's a fantastic story. Again, seriously, I saw the name said the enjoyable pain of growth. Typically, when you hear the term pain of growth, it's like, oh, it's gonna be exhausting, right? But embracing and inviting, I think that's a good mindset. You were talking about a mindset quite a bit of how to look into it. So how does one already in this part of their life go to artificial intelligence? You're an expert in artificial intelligence and application of artificial intelligence in coaching. So what another twist.
Yeah.
That was another story.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about coaching is it's a constant game of reinvention. And so I had to reinvent myself from being an athlete to being a leader on campus. Then from becoming a consultant to then figuring out how do I start a company and coach people who have kids older than me, right? And then it happens again. And so EPOG Academy, what we do is we would make personal development part of education, right? We say it's not just math, science, and reading that determine whether or not you realize your potential. We say you need power. And power is our evidence-based framework for the 5 core mental capacities that you need to be self-aware, self-determined, and resilient. And power stands for purpose, ownership, wisdom, execution, and resilience. Power. It's a practical process for realizing potential. Purpose is all about your vision. Where are you going and why? Who could you become? Right? The first thing you need if you're going on a journey, the first thing you need to decide is that you're going on a journey. So where are you going and why does that matter? Right? And so that's what we ask kids. Where do you want to be in 5 years? But not just what do you want to accomplish? Who do you want to be? And why does that matter? How is the world better beyond yourself if you actually achieve this? Ownership is all about where are you now? What is your vehicle? I know where I want to go, but then now here's where I am. Here's here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses. Because if I'm taking a boat or if I'm taking a plane, that's going to determine how I get to my destination. So personality test, how am I wired? Wisdom is all about breaking down your long-term goals into smaller steps. There's a quote that I love that says, you accrue incremental wisdom as you implement your flawed plan. You accrue incremental wisdom as you implement your flawed plan. So we tell them, make a plan. And it's okay if it's flawed. You can't have a perfect plan because you don't know what you're doing. You haven't done it yet.
Exactly.
But create a plan and follow it. Right? Then the E in power, that's execution. You got to do the work. I'm very big on application. So we could talk about vision and values and all this fluffy language, but what are you doing on Tuesday afternoon that helps you accomplish that, right? So we also help them break that down, build the habits. And then the R in power is resilience. And resilience isn't just about bouncing back from setbacks. If you spend your whole life bouncing back, you don't make a lot of progress. How do you grow from the negative events? Like judo. And judo is a martial art where you use your opponent's attacks as your attack. So if someone throws a punch, you use that momentum to like flip them over on their head. And so how do you take, when life throws you punches, how do you grow because of those things? And so that's what we talk about. The way we deliver that is through coaching. So we have our power development program. They go through a worksheet, and then they work with a coach one-on-one. And so we started in the pandemic, right? And this is how we transitioned to AI. We started off with one-on-one ICF coaches because to get your ACC and to get your credentials, a certain percentage has to be pro bono. And when I learned that, I was like, wait, you mean to tell me there's these executive coaches who charge hundreds of dollars an hour, work with CEOs, and they have to give it away for free, and we're actually helping them? I was like, oh, wow, okay, there's the opportunity. Let's take this game-changing experience of coaching and let's make it accessible in under-resourced communities to help augment their counseling departments. So that's what we did. So students who are at the school could raise their hand voluntarily and say, hey, I want to do this coaching thing. I'll come talk to the students, tell them about power. Hey, you have purpose, you have gifts, and we want to help you accomplish them. We're not going to tell you what to do. You're the expert at your life, but we will help. And they ate that up. They drink that up because no one's talking to these kids, telling them you could be something and here's how. But you decide what success is. They're just not hearing that, which is crazy to me. Yeah. And so how do we make that the standard, you know? And so that's what we did. And we ran studies with Rice, and we saw that they were increasing their goal orientation, their resilience, their adaptability. Kids loved it. We have all these testimonials about students meeting with their coach, and yeah, it's awesome. Challenge is scalability and sustainability. When I started out, I wanted to build something that was effective, sustainable, and scalable to measurably improve student achievement and well-being through personal development while making it accessible in underserved communities, right? So that is the objective of why EPOG Academy exists. Effective, check. We ran the studies. Cool, this is making an impact. Sustainable, I don't know. Scalable, no, right? The challenge was, as we grew our program, we got capped at around 40 students at the schools because they didn't have private spaces to meet with their coach.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. You know, because, you know, they're not going to talk vulnerably with their coach if like their crush is sitting right there and they're, you know, someone else is right here. And so that was an issue. And then funding and education goes up and down. And so our biggest partner got cut, funding cut. And so our program wasn't resilient because we were serving a small subset of the students, and they're going to prioritize the things that reach all of them. So there's some more adversity. And so around that time, I'm like, man, I don't know how we're going to continue this model yet. I had a lot of figuring things out to do. And around that time, that's when AI was hitting the scene. And personally, in my own life, you know, I'm running 2 organizations. And so the efficiencies of using ChatGPT and other tools, like I just dove headfirst into that. And I started to see different opportunities. And I remember I was watching this video of a 12-year-old boy. He had no programming experience. He said he used ChatGPT to code a website. And the website would take inputs from a user and then generate a customized story based on the details that the user gave it. And I thought to myself, well, one, I'm thinking too small. If he can do it, I can do it. You know, I'm using it to write emails. And then I was like, wait, how can I use this to empower students? The number one thing that all of our students worked on with their coach, the first thing they worked on was like, what am I going to do after high school? And you ask them about what careers they're interested in. And a lot of times they just say what they've been exposed to, which unfortunately is often underneath what they're capable of because they're just not exposed. And I was like, wow, AI has the broadest experience and it can create a personalized recommendation for them. And so I stayed up like super late one night and I figured out I had ChatGPT teach me how to write some lines of code, but then also how to use some no code tools. And I was able to build this tool and I called it Pathfinder. And it would take inputs from a user, student, what's their name, what grade are they in, what are their strengths, what are their interests, and then it would generate 5 different career pathways that align with them. For me, it said nonprofit leader, leadership coach, I think it was consultant, it was like psychotherapist and something else. And I was like, oh wow, this thing like would have resonated with high school Tim. And so I went to the school, they loved it. And then I was like, you know what? They don't need just pathways. They liked it, it exposed them to things, but they need something that can help them on the day to day. It's Thursday at 4 p.m. and I have a test tomorrow. I've been procrastinating. I'm not motivated and I feel stuck, right? How do I actually resolve that? They don't just need a plan. They need help along the way. And I was like, you know what? Could we build a coach GPT? Could this thing actually coach? And this is early 2023, before all the hype around it. And so I built a little MVP, a minimum viable prototype. I went to a school. We had students use it, and they're like, "Oh wow, we actually like using this." And we did surveys, and we found that they would actually rather talk to the AI coach than their counselor in the classroom. Yeah, because it won't judge them. They could talk to it at 9 p.m. when it's inappropriate to talk to an adult from school. Right. Right. And it has this breadth of information. And I was like, oh, wow, there's an opportunity here. Our past model was capped, right? Yeah. We couldn't reach the students. This might be a low barrier way to get students some coaching experience. Now, the thought isn't, is this going to replace and is this better than a human coach? That's not what we're trying to do. It's about what is the best available human. And in the US, there is a 400-to-1 student to counselor gap. Yeah. What's recommended by the Association of Counselors in America is 250-to-1. That's a big gap. Big gap. The average student gets about 36 minutes per year with their guidance counselor. That's one 15-minute session a semester. Yeah. Right. And so that's an unreasonable ask of the counselor, and students are left hanging. Right. And it's associated with worse graduation, worse well-being, and undermatching in college and career, aka students don't realize their potential. So like, what, can we bridge this gap with AI? And so I've been on that journey for the last 18 months. That's amazing. That's amazing. And then I remember I heard you speak at another event, and you almost instantaneously changed that ratio and were able to reach so many more students. And again, in the populations that need that coaching dramatically. I'm watching the time a little bit, and you mentioned that before several times, that there is a fear of change, there is a fear of AI. So how and you just said this is not about replacing a human coach. It is the scale and the beginning support for the student. So where do you see AI application to coaching making the biggest, most sustainable impacts moving forward? Yeah, that's powerful. I think it's ubiquitous. I think just like we use electricity for everything, we don't think electricity is powering everything. Right now, AI is newer. At least generative AI is newer. So we talk about it. I think in the coming years, it'll just be how you work, how you accomplish things. It'll be implied that you're augmenting what you're doing for work. Right. One of the things that I think is powerful is amplification. So there's an external version and then there's an internal version. So me as an entrepreneur, a lot of coaches are solopreneurs or have a small team. This is one of the best tools to amplify you. And there's some things I'm doing around that right now. But then also my impact in the world, I'm able to have an outsized impact. I built out that, coaching tool. And then I did a seminar with 50 kids in the room, and they all did a 30-minute session. And afterwards I asked them about it. Oh, hey, I got a goal, I got unstuck. And I was like, hold up. In 30 minutes, I gave 50 kids a 30-minute session. That's 25 hours of coaching in 30 minutes. Whoa. And the only reason it wasn't 50 is because there wasn't 100 kids in the room. My effort would have been the same, right? And I was like, okay, wow, the opportunity for me as an individual to scale my impact is like none other before. And so we've developed several versions since then. Now it's called Power Path, and we just actually launched with a small group of students in a district here in Houston. And we have a team of researchers, and we're looking at it. We're doing the research, and we have a tech department. We were able to just start building out. And so we're all in on measuring, well, how does this actually move the needle on academic achievement and personal well-being? And so I think for me, the ability for an individual to have outsized impact in the world, like there's no time like the present, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a solopreneur. You can immediately save 10, 15 hours on something as soon as you apply it. And people hear AI, they think complexity. It's actually a paradox, because the more complex a system is, often the easier it is to use. Think about, you used to have to ride a horse and buggy. You have to raise horses and all these different things. Now cars drive themselves. Yeah. Right. And so it's way more complex. So same thing with this, you just use language. And so what I like to do as well is help other people leverage the exponential advancements in technology to break it down into tangible, bite-sized pieces. I think a lot of people talk about fears and AI and, DeepSeek and Project Stargate. That's great. I think it's important, but like, what does this mean for me in my business? What does this mean for me in my coaching business? And so I put together a coaching innovation lab. And right now I'm taking a cohort of coaches through how do you go from awareness with AI to results, practical application to me to get tangible, measurable ROI. And it's so fun. It's so awesome seeing coaches just expand, seeing that, oh man, they were afraid of AI. And now, hey, I just use it.
Yeah, they love it, right? They love it.
Yeah, it saved me 10 hours. And so I think the through line of all of this is how do you push the boundaries of what's possible for people? I care a lot about how people develop, and what my life's task is for me to be is to improve how people develop in the 21st century. Where do people develop? Education and workforce. And so how can we put a GPS for success in the hands of students? How do you put a coach in the pocket of every student in America and beyond so that they can be more adept at being able to navigate the challenges that they face as they're striving for self-determination and agency and autonomy? And then how do you empower professionals to supercharge what they can do to amplify their impact in the world? And right now, that's what I'm going full force towards.
Wow, that's an ambitious agenda, but knowing you, yeah, it'll be happening. Before we know it, we'll be reading about it. So Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. So much great passion, and thank you for that. Because as you speak, I mean, you can not help but being excited about everything that you're talking about and the impact that it's making. And I will close with the just a reminder to our viewers that ICF is celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and I think that Tim just gave us a little glimpse into what the next 30 years gonna be, because we came from humble beginnings due to the absolute fantastic foresight of our founders and the first coaches. And now we're moving towards the era of amplification, era of scale, and era of greater permission, I think, very explicit permission for that personal, professional growth and the impact in the world, which coaching is all about. So Tim, thanks again for joining us. It was absolutely fascinating, and good luck with your projects.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. You asked great questions.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you next month.